Aaron Rodgers and the Jets are divorcing, which means Aaron Rodgers is available to sign with any team. The best landing spots for Rodgers, we'll talk about that, and the other top quarterback options this offseason. The QB carousel. Cole Thompson's going to join me to weigh in. It's the Jake Asman Football Show, and it starts right now.
Oh, yeah. It's time for the Jake Asman Football Show. Brought to you by BetUS. Expert betting odds and fantasy stats. So let's get into some NFL football. Brought to you by our friends at BetUS. So get your questions ready. Here's your host, Jake Asman.
Here we go on a Friday. I guess it's not technically a football Friday anymore, but we're talking plenty of football. And look, just because the football season has ended doesn't mean there's still not plenty of things to wager on. Use BetUS to bet on any sport at any time. 150% sign-up bonus with your first deposit and a 125% deposit bonus with your second and third deposit. So take full advantage, whether it's basketball, hockey, UFC, boxing, you name it. You can find it over at BetUS. Ladies and gentlemen, let's say hello to the great Cole Thompson, who made it safely back from New Orleans. Cole, a week ago today, we were living the dream in NOLA, and here we are a week later, back to reality.
Yeah, the Jets are dumb. What else is new? How you been, Jake Asman?
Oh, man. All right, well, let's get right into it.
Yeah, let's just do it.
I've been very outspoken on my Jet show here on YouTube that I would have kept Aaron Rodgers for another season. Your thoughts on the Jets saying see ya to AR?
The only way that this makes sense is if he said in a negotiation with new head coach Aaron Glenn, I'm not taking a pay cut, which we all know has not gone on. So that's going to be the thing that I can understand why the Jets want to move past Aaron Rodgers. But there's no downside to Aaron Rodgers coming back next year on two different ways. The first one is the Jets are really good. They end up bolstering up the offensive line. They do a good job of revamping the offense to where Breece Hall has a 1,000-yard season. They get complimentary play from Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's happy with the quarterback. They also put together a pretty stable unit to where they're scoring inside the red zone, and they get 10 wins and they make the playoffs. Or they're so bad with Aaron Rodgers next year that they openly are starting to rebuild by keeping him under contract, keeping Garrett Wilson happy, keeping everyone still in the same motion. And then next season, they're in line to draft a quarterback that they feel like is a really, really good upgrade for the long term. And next year's quarterback draft class is so much more dynamic and it's so much more versed to where there are guys that are going to be available probably in the teens that would never be considered in this year's draft class. So even if the Jets were to go like say 6-11 next year, they still would be able to land one of the top quarterbacks that's coming out in 2026. So there's no downside by bringing back Aaron Rodgers. Now what you're doing is you're going into the market to try and find yourself a brand new quarterback that hopefully will fit the system. And it feels like that they don't want to either openly tank, they want to compete, but they want to compete with guys who are going to cost way too much in a draft class to where you can go add in another quarterback like a Kyle McCord, or maybe you go after like a Jackson Dart in round 3 or Jalen Milroe in round 4 if that's what you want, or Quinn Ewers in round 3. But none of them are going to elevate the room. The problem with what you have right now when it comes to Aaron Rodgers is he's the best option available, and especially if the contract is going to bode well in favor of New York to where he gives money back and they restructure it to where you can be competitive, but it's not a downside. That's ultimately what I don't understand. What is the harm of bringing back in a guy like Aaron Rodgers outside of maybe persona and the fact that he doesn't want to take a pay cut? And we don't know if either one of those are that thing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, look, ultimately, when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, I understand there's a lot that comes with him, but to me, if it's about winning, he still gives you the best chance to win. And now, I'm not saying it can't work without him, but I feel like they created a hole at quarterback they didn't necessarily need to do right away. Like if Aaron Glenn's this great leader that many of us feel he is and people have said he is, I feel like he could quote unquote reel in Aaron Rodgers and handle all that. Like we're going to talk about landing spots for Rodgers here in a moment. Like all the landing spots are teams seemingly with established coaches. Well, you hope that Aaron Glenn could be that guy. And we're just going to say he needs a clean slate from Rodgers. I don't know. I just don't necessarily buy it.
Here's the problem. He's a player's coach. He's a former player. He's a Pro Bowl cornerback who has been a part of disastrous rosters and rebuilds before. He was a part of the first expansion franchise with the Houston Texans and eventually became a future Pro Bowler with them. So this is a guy that will take no nonsense from anybody. He doesn't care that Aaron Rodgers is a 41-year-old four-time Pro Bowler. No, he's saying, you're going to do it my way. We're going to speak on the same level because we both have the respect of the game, and we're going to do everything possible to put ourselves in a great position to take that next step forward. But unfortunately, it just feels like we're not going to do that. And that's where I have the issue with it. There's no downside in bringing Rodgers back on a restructured deal. It makes sense to go ahead and bring back in a guy like Devontae Adams. So now it gives you a 1-2 combination at wide receiver. Your new offensive coordinator is going to have somebody to work with that has years of experience. It makes no sense to me when we talk about why would you not consider Aaron Rodgers when you're going into a new regime, and especially when it's a player's coach. Like, there has to be something behind closed doors to where the reports that we're hearing coming out are either somewhat true and that he wants to do it his way, or we're talking about a guy that is just not wanting to play the game in the same passion, the same way that Aaron Glenn wants, and he wants to start off the franchise on a brand new foot. But either way, it doesn't make any sense. It simply just does not when you look at the status of where New York is. And you and I brought this up multiple times. The record does not speak volume about what the Jets actually are. They aren't, in my opinion, as far off as some want to make them out to be in being a force in the AFC. And we just watched this last year. The Denver Broncos went 10-7 with Bo Nix check down machine as their starting quarterback. You can put yourself in a good enough position if you add pieces around Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall, especially on the defensive side, to go right back in the running. And you're watching as players are frustrated. You're watching as Quentin Williams is tweeting out his frustration. You're watching as Garrett Wilson maybe now wants to have a contract extension. You're watching as Breece Hall is retweeting everything with Aaron Rodgers in it. It's literally so frustrating because of it feels like that you have these pieces in play, and unfortunately, they're going to be stuck in a rebuild like they just were going into a rebuild with Robert Saleh.
It depends how quickly Glenn can get his quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, if he hits on someone, then he'll be all right. If he doesn't, then it's going to be more of the same as a Jet fan, right back into quarterback hell. Super chat from Cuddy, who says, why can't we, meaning the Jets, get any picks for Rodgers? It's because of the contract, Cuddy. Yeah. I mean, the Jets aren't going to drag this on. They're going to move on, and no one's going to absorb that contract. So that's why. Fire Aaron Glenn is gifted a channel membership, which I do appreciate. Fire Aaron Glenn. I will make sure you get entered in the Asmaniac raffle that I do on the Jet Show after the show right here. Also, Cole, we're going to talk about landing spots for all these like top veteran QB options. So we'll start with Rodgers because we led with that. To me, the team that makes the most sense for Aaron Rodgers are the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a coach in Mike Tomlin that every year gets the absolute most out of his roster, despite never having very good to great quarterback play at all. If Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers, they provide him with an elite defense. They provide him with a running game. They provide him with a strong offensive line. They provide him with, obviously, a Hall of Fame coach. I think it could work. I think he raises the potential ceiling of the Steelers because they're kind of in no man's land in the draft. They're in no man's land as far as what they could do to get a young stud QB because they've been so good under Tomlin that they've never bottomed out to be picking at the top of the draft. And this is not the QB draft where you want to be going out there and drafting someone early anyway. So I think Rodgers for 1 year with Tomlin elevates the Steelers' ceiling, and I could see it actually working. I think Rodgers would play for Tomlin, be on board with whatever offense Tomlin and company wanted to run, and I could see that marriage actually working out really well. I don't know if Pittsburgh will do it, but I think Pittsburgh and Aaron Rodgers would make a lot of sense.
I don't think you're wrong. I honestly, just to see history repeat itself, I want him to go to the Minnesota Vikings. That way he leads the team to the NFC Championship and then screws it up all next year, and then JJ McCarthy comes on it. Like, I want to see that just for history to go back online, and then we see the trifecta of the Brett Favre regime come back. But Pittsburgh's not wrong. I'm going to be honest, Jake. I think he retires. I really do. Like, I can see where you come from Pittsburgh. They're a team that always finishes with 10-plus wins. They're a team that has an elite defense. They're good on the ground. They have some weapons like George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth. They can turn towards the NFL draft to bolster up their offensive line. They don't really lose that much defensively in free agency. But when you look at Rodgers, what more do you have to prove? You're a 4-time MVP. You won a Super Bowl. You're going to go down top 5 in passing yards. You're going to go down top 10 in passing touchdowns. You're going to go down top 15 in completion percentage. You're going to go down top 20 in pass attempts. You're going to go down top 25 in passer rating. So everything that you look at in Aaron Rodgers' career, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. There's nothing else that he has to prove other than just that he can get past that next level. He thought he could do it with the Jets. And when I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, I feel like there's a ceiling with Mike Tomlin. I love Mike Tomlin. I think that Mike Tomlin is one of the most underappreciated coaches in the NFL because every single year we hear about how Pittsburgh fans want him fired. And I'm like, how are you going to do better than a dude that hasn't had a losing season ever in his entire career? But also, I feel like that the limit is probably the divisional round of the AFC playoffs with them. So right now, you're not going to win a Super Bowl with Pittsburgh. I don't think that you're going to be starting with San Francisco like some people want to make it out to be. Las Vegas is going through a rebuild. I think Minnesota was going to push all their chips in the pile when it comes to J.J. McCarthy next year. If Tennessee want to go ahead and make him an offer, sure, but what is at best? 7-10, so you're not going to the playoffs? At this moment, when I look at Rodgers, the Jets was the best location for him because if he had a consistency, he had some weaponry, he was going to get back to Devontae Adams. I just don't see an area where right now, if it's not a plug and play perfect fit to where I guarantee myself I'm in the playoffs, I'm in the conference title, and I have a shot at winning the Super Bowl, I think he retires. I do agree with you. Pittsburgh is a good landing spot, but I just see retirement right
now. Look, it's not crazy. How about Vegas as a possibility as well? Pete Carroll, old coach, Aaron Rodgers, old quarterback. They're kind of in no man's land. With the quarterback as well in the draft at pick 6. Maybe Vegas. Could that make some sense?
It could, but I think it makes sense for another quarterback that we're probably going to talk about in a minute.
Sam Darnold?
Russell Wilson.
Interesting. Russell Wilson. Yeah, okay, so let's talk about some of the other options out there here. But gun to your head, prediction for Rodgers is retirement?
I would say retirement. That's just gun to my head.
All right, let's talk about some of the other guys out there. You mentioned Russell Wilson. Do you see him in Vegas?
Yeah, I do.
Why is there an echo, by the way? What's up with this echo?
I have no idea. Hang on, let me see. Is my microphone acted up?
It might be. It's acting up worse than how you acted in New Orleans.
Oh, you're adorable. How about now? Any better?
Much better. Go ahead.
All right, there we go. So I think when you talk about Russell Wilson, the only thing that would shock me of him not going to Las Vegas is Chip Kelly doesn't want to work with him. Because Chip Kelly is the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL now, $6 million per year. They're in no man's land when it comes to a quarterback. They have to add in somebody. Aiden O'Connell, I don't think is good enough to where you can just say, yep, guaranteed QB1 going into 2025. I think if they're going to target somebody, maybe it is Will Howard from Ohio State. Maybe it's Kyle McCord in the 3rd round. Maybe it's Jackson Dart at pick 37. But you got to be able to better your offensive and defensive line. You got to add in, I think, another weapon. I think Ted McMillan coming on in from Arizona at pick number 6 is a perfect formation, especially when you look at what Jeremiah Smith did last year at Ohio State with Chip Kelly. But I feel like that if you're talking about Russell Wilson, just being that veteran inside the locker room, reuniting and joining forces with Pete Carroll once again, ending his career on a high note where the coach that believed in him so much that when he was a rookie coming out of Wisconsin, they said, nope, we don't care that we paid a lot of money for Matt Flynn. You're our dude. You're our guy. We're starting with you from here on out. Let's go ahead and bring you back on in. They have over they have over $115 million in salary cap space, so they can spend money however they see fit. I really think that when you look at a guy like Russell Wilson, just joining back up with Pete Carroll, working alongside with Chip Kelly and being that mentor to another guy waiting in the wings, whoever that is in the 2nd or 3rd round, it gives you a good spot to where you have veteranship. And the entire thing that we talk about when it comes to Tom Brady taking on over in Las Vegas is they want adults in the room. They want guys who are going to be leaders. As long as Russell Wilson is on the same page as we talk about when it comes to Pete Carroll's vision, we're in a good spot. You have 2 leaders that can easily put your offense in the right position.
I see Darnold in Vegas. They need a quarterback. They'll spend money. They got the cap space. Darnold in Vegas or Darnold in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then they trade out of the number 1 spot. Let's say the Giants come up from 3-1. Giants then are taking one of the quarterbacks, probably Shador. And then in that scenario, at number 3, if you're the Titans, you just guaranteed yourself either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. So you're getting maybe the best player in the draft at pick 3, and you have a young quarterback that's still, ascending in Darnold. He's only 28 at the start of next year. I could see that as a possibility for Darnold, either Vegas or Tennessee as an option. Or, we'll get to the Stafford conversation here. I mean, what happens with Stafford impacts a lot because if he leaves the Rams, wouldn't Darnold make a lot of sense for McVay? He just crushed it with Kevin O'Connell, who comes from the McVay tree. I could see that being a fit as well.
Tennessee is the pick for me for Darnold. And here's the reason why. When you go into the draft and you're trying to figure out for your franchise quarterback, you need to answer these 4 questions. Number 1, are you absolutely in love with the passer? Number 2, do you believe that he could lead your team deeper than you thought that you could the year before? Number 3, do you believe that he can win a Super Bowl? And number 4, do you believe that your team will be better by drafting him over a different player? If any one of those answers is no, trade back. Because there's no point of you hitting on a quarterback that 2 years from now you're going to hit the reset button on, and you as a coach and a GM are going to be fired. I look at a guy like Abdul Carter. I think he is the most polished prospect coming out of college, and I believe he should be the number 1 overall pick. He is the number 1 player in the draft this year. And number 2 for me is Travis Hunter. So if you can move back to, say, number 4, or even let's just say to number 6, you're still in line to get multiple draft picks. You're still in line to better your roster when it comes to what you're going to add in. Your offensive line is far from complete. You got to get better. So whether that's like a Will Campbell from LSU or a Kelvin Banks from Texas, you'll gladly take them as a consolation prize if you miss out on Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. There's teams that feel like they are desperate to land their franchise quarterback, and they may like a guy like Cam Ward more. They may like a guy like Shadur Sanders more. You may think that Sam Darnold is good enough with the passing attack that you have with guys such as Calvin Ridley, what you have with Chig Okonkwo, what you have in the running game with Tony Pollard, and then what you have with Tajay Spears, that all you got to do is add in an offensive lineman or add in a couple of defensive players that you're going to be right in the running for a winnable division in the AFC South. I think that makes way more sense than drafting a guy that you may have a few doubts on and you're not sure is going to elevate your team that much more than Will Levis did. I think Tennessee is a perfect location for Sam Darnold if he does hit free agency.
I mean, the Vikings, I guess, could also keep him and then
they could franchise tag him.
Yeah, and then maybe they could trade McCarthy and keep Darnold. I don't know. It feels like the way it ended for Darnold, that's not going to happen because of how poor the last 2 games were. But, I mean, you never know. Once they maybe take a step back and evaluate, it's possible. I mean, we joked about Rodgers going to Minnesota. What if, Rodgers even went to Tennessee and they did the trade scenario and they just punted on a quarterback till next year? They got a first-time GM there in Bergonzi. He's not under the gun to get the quarterback right away. It could buy him some time.
The problem with getting a Rodgers in there is that if you are Brian Callahan, you want to guarantee that you're back in 2026. Like that's it for me. Because if your team goes 6-11 with Aaron Rodgers and he's only coming back into play, my entire premise is I'm not going to lose my job over this. I want to guarantee that regardless of what the record is, I am here for the long haul at least one more season. With Darnold, when you look at the numbers and how he was playing in a very similar offense to what Callahan runs underneath O'Connell, you could say, listen, I'm willing to bet my career or bet my head coaching status that I can elevate this guy to the same level that O'Connell did. I come from the same background. I come from the same dialogue. It's a similar offensive concept. He'll fit here. But when it comes to Rodgers, a 41-year-old that's joining a division to where, yeah, you still have CJ Stroud, and yes, you still have Anthony Richardson, and a revamp, hopefully Trevor Lawrence, you're probably going to be in that 8-9 win range if he's at his peak. But if he regresses, I don't want to bet my career on that if I'm Brian Callahan. So if I am guaranteed I'm back next year in 2026, sure, by all means, let me go ahead and bite the bullet. I'll take Aaron Rodgers, and then I want to trade down. But I look at the Tennessee Titans. Their best course of action right now is trading that number 1 overall pick and getting draft compensation. No questions asked.
Super chat from Mike, who writes in, best landing spots for Rodgers are the Niners if they don't overpay Purdy, Rams if they trade Stafford, Vikings, Steelers. We talked about the Vikings and Steelers for Rodgers. Look, the Rams would make the most sense for Rodgers if they were to move on from Stafford. I don't get the whole Stafford thing, Cole.
I don't understand it.
They were a couple plays away from beating the Eagles and being in the NFC title game. In fact, if you look back at the Eagles' run, they gave the Eagles the most difficult game during their run. If you think about it, I don't get it. I think Stafford still could play. It feels like, based on what Adam Schefter said yesterday, the two sides will work out whatever differences they have contractually, and I think he's going to stay there. But should Stafford be dealt to the Giants or wherever that's been rumored, Rodgers to the Rams for a year with McVay would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does, but here's the problem. What's stopping Stafford? Is it the fact that Cooper Kupp is going to be traded? Okay,
I think it's contract stuff. I think Stafford's been underpaid now, and he wants to get the bag. That's what it sounds like.
But at the same time, when I look at Stafford, I'm just like, unless it's the whole Cooper Kupp thing to where your team feels like you're that far away from winning a championship, like this is what Les Snead has done, I think is so mind-boggling because people aren't paying attention to how he has been able to win in 2 different ways. The first way was screw the picks. Let's go add in veteran talent, win a Super Bowl. Last few years, they're a team that has trusted day 3 selections and development of talent to put themselves in a position to where they go to the playoffs. Went to the playoffs in 2023, went to the playoffs in 2024. Most of their defensive players are 3rd and 4th round picks. I mean, yeah, you have Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, and the guy won Defensive Rookie of the Year. But you look at the offensive line, 3 starters are day 2 selections. Your starting tight end was a round 4 selection. Your starting running back was a 5th round pick. Your star wide receiver was a 5th round pick. Like, Les Snead has gone out of his way to say we can develop talent and get to 11 wins as long as we have stability at the quarterback position. And so if you're able to get a good deal in return for Cooper Kupp, add in a quality number 2 wide receiver to pair alongside with Puka Nacua, plus maybe spend a little bit in free agency to bring in that number 3 guy, what's the point of leaving if you're Stafford? Like, what's a better position than where you are right now? You're in a division to where you've been winning. You're in a division with a coach that knows how to get the best version out of you. You put up stellar numbers last year. You're going to be able to, I think, get to 10 plus wins. Do you feel like that there's better ahead of you at age 37? Like, I'm sorry. It makes no sense to me whatsoever that we would see Matthew Stafford at this point in his career go anywhere else.
Derek Carr, Cole, where does he end up if the Saints move on? They officially have Kellen Moore now. Longman Rover now confirmed at the press conference yesterday. If Derek Carr is cut, I see him as a possible Jet, and I wouldn't hate it if it means Levante sticks around, because by getting rid of Rodgers, you're essentially getting rid of Devontae too. I mean, Carr wouldn't cost a lot if they cut him. I'm just curious to see where he ends up if they move on from him.
So you want okay? Remember,
no. I wanted Aaron Rodgers back.
Okay.
The Jets are getting rid of Rodgers, so I'm trying to come up with a path where this team has a chance to not be awful next year.
I say, because I remember trying to sell Derek Carr a few years ago over Aaron Rodgers, and everyone freaked the hell out. So it's like, okay, let's not go down that path. You've already brought up the team. I like him in Pittsburgh. I do. I think Pittsburgh, you get a veteran in the locker room. You get him to pair alongside with a George Pickens. They're going to add, I think, a wide receiver in the draft. You like what you have in the run game with Jalen Warren. Do you bring back Najee Harris on a 1-year deal? Do you like the offensive line? How do you feel about where he fits in terms of the play style? And it doesn't stop you from bringing in another quarterback. Like, maybe you fall in love with Kyle McCord or Jackson Dart in round 2, and you say to yourself, okay, cool. We're going to develop them, let them stick with let them stick with Carr for this year. We already know that our defense can carry ourselves, but also at the same time, I don't know where Derek Carr best fits. Like, do you feel like that you're truly upgrading with Carr in your situation? In Pittsburgh, you don't have a quarterback right now. Like, Justin Fields is a free agent. You also have Russell Wilson as a free agent. Yeah, do you feel like that maybe you could get a better deal by getting Carr in there? And is it going to be very similar to where Carr gets cut and they're paying such money in dead cap space with New Orleans that you're willing to take the league minimum and put them in there? Like, those are some things that I look at. I don't see the Jets. I don't see the Giants either. I think Pittsburgh's a good spot. I think that probably if you want to throw like another team in there, Tennessee, I would make some sense. But I think Pittsburgh and Tennessee are probably the front runners.
Where's Cousins go?
Who's going to pick up that contract?
Watch the Jets at him.
I'll say the Jets. Is that going to be it?
They're going to cut him, and then he'd be like Russell Wilson last year, where he plays for $1.2 million, the veterans minimum, because Denver's paying his whole salary. It'd be Atlanta.
Would you hate that?
I would hate it. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to bring in another old quarterback coming off an Achilles, you just keep Rodgers, who was way better than Cousins this past year.
I'd rather Jameis Winston, actually, in New York.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show. I'm serious. I would. I really would actually think that Jameis Winston.
If you told me it was a Jameis Winston, Tyrod Taylor quarterback room, there's at least like hope there. If Tyrod's healthy, he's competent, and Winston's fun, like if the Jets are going to be bad, at least they score points.
Like, think about this for a second. What if Jameis ends up throwing for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns and 22 interceptions? Okay, cool. You know what? You're probably still going to be a team that goes 6-11. You're still going to be in line to draft a quarterback. You're going to have fun this first year. Like, at least you have that. Maybe you'll end up seeing Garrett Wilson go for over 1,000 yards. Maybe you'll get a complimentary player and a wide receiver too. Maybe you'll get to 7-10 and you'll be competitive going into the month of December. Name the last time that you have seen a quarterback lead the team that you root for, Jake Asman, into the month of December with anything other than dismay, actual expectations. I think that Jameis Winston at least can give you something. And if it's anything, it's entertainment, to say the least.
Yeah, look, you could do a lot worse than Jameis. I mean, it'd be fun. Like, that's all I got for you. It'd be fun.
I say it's fun. Like, I don't know what to expect, but also I know what to expect when you get the other quarterbacks in there. Guess what it's going to be? A lot of money and probably the same results.
Well, that's why Cousins, because of the salary, is why people are like, whoa, 1.2 million. It's like, well, he might be washed, though. Have we thought about that?
Do we know for a fact that the version of Cousins last year is not going to be the version we see next year? And yeah, it's 1.2 million. But when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, perfect example, they're fine with having an elite defense that will carry the team while the offense is mid to slightly average. They're okay with that. Do the Jets have that right now? Do the Jets have all the pieces in line, especially with what they're losing in free agency, and they may not be able to bring back in? Do they have a defense that's good enough to carry them to a 9-8, 10-7 finish with a guy like Kirk Cousins? No, I don't think so. Not right now, they don't.
No, but I'll tell you what. If the Jets do sign Jameis Winston, we might be losing Rodgers on McAfee, but how about Winston on Jake Asman?
Hey, Jameis, would you come to the Jets? They might need a quarterback. Yeah. Jets, Jets. Ladies and gentlemen, our exclusive interview with now friend of the show, Jameis Winston.
He is a great friend of the show. We appreciate him a lot.
He gave us our best interview all week last week.
He did. He made it abundantly clear he wanted to play for the Jets. I mean, he didn't actually say he wants to play for the Jets, but he didn't say he didn't want to play for the Jets.
Exactly.
So,
and he asked me, do planes fly? And I said, yes, Jets, Jets.
Exactly. He fits the requirements of what is needed to be a quarterback up in New York City right now. And by the way, he is a star in the making. He's made for New York. Like, that personality is made for the Big Apple. It's made for that team right now, especially for what they're going through.
All right, a couple other names here to rapid fire some takes on. Justin Fields, his best fit is where?
Honestly, Las Vegas would not be the worst fit. I also think that I could see him in the New York Giants uniform.
I could see him going to the Giants, and then they'll still draft someone, and Fields competes with that guy Darnold style, like with J.J. McCarthy.
Exactly. Like imagine if Shadur gets hurt in practice, and then it's like, okay, cool. Now we got to start Justin Fields. And then you can let him go in a year, especially if he does well.
Ladies and gentlemen, a super chat has come through the pipeline from Asman, an Asmaniac of 17 months. What's up, my guy, Jake Cole? To all the Asmaniacs, happy Valentine's. At Cole, where would you rank a healthy Jordan Travis in this 2025 QB class?
Surprisingly, probably QB4, like just because of his production and what we saw from him at Florida State for 2 years. Like last year's quarterback class was just so loaded that it felt like anybody who wasn't in the top 6, it was probably like you weren't good enough to be a starter and you probably were just going to be viewed as a backup. But in this class, you got Jackson Dart, maybe as QB3, maybe it's Kyle McCord, maybe you throw in a Will Howard. I think at worst, Jordan Travis is QB5. I think at best, he's probably QB3. It's really not that far-fetched when you look at the consistency of how he played at Florida State.
I mean, ultimately, we just don't know because he's not healthy. Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't even know if Jordan Travis is healthy yet. Like, he still has yet to have a practice in the NFL. Like, that's the first step for him. Hopefully, he's medically cleared to be a part of OTAs, and we start to get an idea if he has any chance of competing for a job somewhere with the Jets or elsewhere.
The problem with a guy like with Jordan Travis is you can't be banking on maybe him being perhaps healthy one day to who's to say start for the Jets in week 13. Like, you can't have that. You got to go into the year knowing I have QB1, I have QB2, maybe a QB3. And right now he's a QB3 because we don't know what he is, but the skills are there. It's just, I don't trust him right now coming off of a very significant injury like that. I don't.
Ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button if you haven't already. It's the Jake Asman Football Show. Cole Thompson joining us. We have at least 2 more weeks of the Jake Asman Football Show as our deal with BetUS runs through February. And then, stay tuned.
Who knows?
Cole Thompson might be a big part of the Jake Asman Show once again.
What do you mean might be? I'm always a part of the Jake Asman Show. Whether I'm on the comments section or I'm actually on the show, I'm part of the Jake Asman Show. I'm like a fan favorite.
Please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
Too much. It's too much of me. It's just too much of me like that. Yes, it is, Jake Asman.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to BetUS for sponsoring today's show. Bet on NBA All-Star Weekend. Bet on Team USA Hockey taking on the Canadians tomorrow night. Should be fun. 150% sign-up bonus with your first deposit. And as you see on the screen there, a 125% second and third deposit bonus available as well. So start playing today. Cole, always a pleasure, my friend. As Gator calls you Turd Thompson, I'll call you Cole and say thanks for hopping on. And I'm glad you made it back from New Orleans, man. I was worried about you.
Of course I was. I was always fine driving back at like 1:30 in the morning. Before we get on out of here, I do want to get your opinion on this. I saw this, and it's bothersome to me. How moronic is it to think that Brock Purdy is good enough to be the trade asset that transcends a team like the Las Vegas Raiders?
I don't think they're going to trade a ton for him.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that for 1 year of Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah,
like I saw that. It makes zero sense other than we don't want to pay for him. And because if we don't want to pay for him, we're going to pay a crap load for Aaron Rodgers for 1 year. It makes zero sense whatsoever. That was far and away the worst take I have seen so far in the Brock Purdy scandal. I'd rather the Jets trade for him and then franchise tag him for a year before he goes to Las Vegas and just sucks it up.
Cole, have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
He's Cole. I'm Jake. Thanks for watching the Jake Asman Football Show, brought to you by Bet US.